Hey guys, Santa here, and today I brought another deck profile. Today, I also brought beeps for my computer. Today, I brought the one, the only, Charizard himself. This is a very, very good card. Is this the best deck in the game? No, not really. It's pretty good though, and people have been seeing a lot of success with it. I've been running this particular build for a little bit now. It's a little techy, and I think it's super, super fun. I think it definitely has room to be optimized, and you can tell because starting it off, we run 4 copies of Charizard. I definitely do think this is actually too many. I think 3 is probably the sweet spot for this deck. I've seen a lot of people run 2, but honestly, if you prize a couple of these, you're kind of in a really hard way. So I actually have not particularly encountered problems running 4. This has an absolutely insane ability where when you evolve it from your hand to your Charmeleon, you can search 3 basic fire energy, up to 3, doesn't have to be 3, up to 3 basic fire energy from your deck and slap them straight onto your Pokemon in any way you like, then shuffle your deck. This is very, very good for energy acceleration, and honestly, I've said it before, I'll say it again, please don't hate me for it. I am not the biggest Charizard fan, but I think that using Charizard as an engine in other decks is probably one of my preferred ways to use it. I think I'm going to throw it in a Gouging Fire deck soon just for energy acceleration. I think that's going to be a good way to make Gouging Fire work post-rotation. However, for this deck, we also run 2 copies of Charmeleon. Absolutely love this little shiny guy, but it has the Flare Veil ability, which prevents all effects of attacks used by your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon. So, if they have an attack that distributes damage counters around, your Charmeleon is safe, which is really, really nice. A lot of times you will rare candy from one of your 4 Charmanders into a Charizard. However, if you do find yourself in a situation where you have to evolve into your Charmeleon first, you're honestly not in that bad of shape. So we play 4 of this guy. Don't particularly end up attacking with him a whole lot, but for 2 fire energy, you can deal 30 damage to a Badoo and knock it out, which is really, really good, because if you have been playing this format, you know that Badoo is obnoxious. Again, this deck could definitely be optimized. I am still running the Pidgeot engine, so we're running 2 Pidgeys, both with Call for Family. Search deck for 2 basic Pokemon, slap them to your bench, shuffle your deck. Very, very good. We are playing 2 copies of Pidgeotto. This could probably drop down to 1 since this is more of a rare candy-based strategy. Very similar to the Charmeleon. I love this shiny version of it. Got that from our Paldean Fates openings. Bam! I'm going to link the whole playlist over there because honestly I couldn't tell you which video either of those came from because we opened a lot of Paldean Fates. Now, we're playing 2 copies of Pidgeot EX. I don't think that you need to run a thicker line than 2 Pidgeot EX because it's quick search ability. Once during your turn, you can search your deck for a card and put it into your hand. Search any card in your deck, add it to your hand. Very, very good. But you cannot use more than 1 quick search ability per turn. So if you have 2 of these on the board, you don't get 2 searches. So 1 is totally acceptable. I have not really, or not 1. I found that 2 is pretty acceptable because if you prize 1, you still want to be able to get your searches. Now, again, this is a rare candy-based strategy, so we are running a 1-0-1 line of Duskull, Dusclops, and Dusknoir. The 0 is for Dusclops because you can see we are not running it here. But Curse Blast, once during your turn, you can put 13 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon. That's kind of crazy. It only gets to go to 1 Pokemon. However, trading a Dusknoir for 130 damage onto something so that your Charizard can continue to smack it over. A lot of times you could prize trade 1 for 2, so it's very, very good. As most Charizard lists will run, we run 1 copy of the Rotom V. This will have to change in, 3.5 weeks now when the V Pokemon and anything in F block, you can see it's got the little F down there at the bottom. Anything in the F block is going to be rotating out, so we won't be able to play the Rotom V anymore. And we also won't be able to play one of my favorite tech cards in this deck in Delphox V. So it's Eerie Glow Attack. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now burned and confused. Don't really use that. We use its Magical Fire ability to kind of simulate a Greninja in this deck. For 2 fire and 1 colorless, you get to put 2 energy attached to this Pokemon into the Lost Zone. Little unfortunate. There is no way to get those back. But you do 120 to the active Pokemon, and you are allowed to do 120 damage to another one of your opponent's Pokemon. So, bench sniping, very, very good. Not a lot of decks are running Manaphy nowadays, so this is a really, really strong card. Again, very unfortunate. It does rotate out very soon, so we won't be able to see text like that in the future. Well, we could get future cards that do similar stuff. We play 1 copy of Mew EX. The restart ability is very, very good. You get to draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. Honestly, if you have depleted all of your resources, drawing 3 cards is really, really, really strong. So this is a great way to just keep your stuff going. And honestly, if you are able to get, say, an Arvin off of those 3, then you're basically right back into the game. Now, I am running a very, very silly tech in this deck as well that I've been having a lot of success with. We're running 1 copy of Pecharunt EX as well, which says once during your turn you can switch one of your benched Darkness Pokemon except itself, or other copies, with your active Pokemon. If you do so, the new active Pokemon is now poisoned. Now, you may be asking yourself, hey, doesn't being poisoned like really kind of suck? I'm getting to it, okay? It does kind of suck, but we are doing some funky stuff with that Pecharunt to be able to make fun plays. That is all for the Pokemon. Moving on to the items, as I've mentioned before, this is a rare candy based strategy for the most part. So we are running 4 copies. This just lets you skip from your Duskull straight into your Dusknoir, lets you skip from Charmander into Charizard, lets you skip from Pidgey into Pidgeot. It's very, very good in this deck. We are running 4 copies of Buddy Buddy Puffin. This is super good. This can get you your Charmanders, this can get you your Pidgeys, this can also get you a Duskull straight from the deck. This is a very, very good card to have in a strategy like this. We're also running 4 copies of Ultra Ball. I really like running a tall Ultra Ball count in decks that revolve around Pidgeot EX or that use Pidgeot EX. I just find it's really, really strong to be able to, say if you have a rare candy in your hand, if you have an Ultra Ball and you have a Pidgey on board, you have any card in your deck because your Pidgeot lets you quick search. Around off the items, we have 1 copy of Super Rod. Really, really good for energy recycling. It puts your energy cards back in your deck, which is actually totally fine in a deck like this because your Charizard fetches energy from the deck. So honestly, having a couple energy cards in the deck is exactly where you want them to be. For our ace spec, we're playing Unfair Stamp. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, each player shuffles their hand into the deck, you draw 5, your opponent draws 2. Very, very obnoxious, very, very fun. Now, that is it for the items. Moving on to the supporter cards. We're only playing 3 Arvin. I haven't really found a need for 4. You could definitely justify running 4. Especially when you see my next 3 cards, you can realize that one of those could definitely be cut for a 4th copy of Arvin. But again, I have not had any problems. We're running 3 copies of Iono. Hand fixing is a huge thing in this deck, and again, since we run the Unfair Stamp, this is really nice to just have multiple ways to disrupt your opponent's hand. Charizard is definitely a Pokemon that likes to take advantage of your opponent being in a tough spot and just kind of slowly grind out resources in a war of attrition until eventually there's nothing your opponent can really do. You want your opponent to take a couple of prize cards because your Charizard's attack, Burning Darkness, pull that back up, does 180, but it does 30 more damage for each prize card your opponent has taken. So being able to combine Iono with Charizard EX or even Unfair Stamp with Charizard EX really puts your opponent in a bind. And this is a deck that kind of just sits back, relax, kind of rely on a single prize board state, and just go from there once you're ready. Play 2 copies of Professor's Research. Again, hand fixing is definitely a thing. This could probably move out for something else, but I sincerely haven't had any problems. I really like running Professor's Research. I think it's a strong card, especially if you can deplete all of the resources from your hand and then drop Professor's Research as your last card, because discard your hand and draw 7 cards. If there's no cards in your hand to discard, you just straight draw 7, and a draw 7 is pretty crazy if you ask me. We also run 2 copies of Boss's Orders. I don't really feel like running 1 or 3 is the proper way about it. I think 3 becomes too clunky, and I think 1 you're not going to see it enough. So I prefer to run 2 Boss's Orders personally. That is it for the supporters. Honestly, not that big of a count of supporters. This deck does kind of have a pretty inherent weakness to Badoo, but most decks in the game do right now. All right. We definitely play a stadium. We play 2 copies of Artisan. Once during either player's turn, that player may search their deck for a basic Pokemon that doesn't have a rule box. Put it straight to their bench. This gets you into your Charmanders, this gets you into your Pidgey, this gets you into your Duskull. Unfortunately, it does not toolbox any of your EX or V Pokemon. You could definitely replace this with a couple copies of Nest Ball, but I have not really found a need for the Nest Balls. I've really not missed them in this sort of a build. Moving on, we play a decent number of tools because we do play Arven. So we're running 2 copies of TM Evolution. This is another reason why we run a thicker line of the Charmeleon and the Pidgeotto, because you can TM Evolution on your first turn if you are going second. And you could just evolve your stuff straight and then start progressing your strategy, and it's pretty good, man. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Play 1 copy of the Forest Sealstone. This is phenomenal. Again, this is a Pokemon tool, so when you activate Arven, you get to search for an item and a tool. If you search yourself a Forest Sealstone, you can then search any card in your deck 1 time. 1 time. This is like budget Pidgeot. Like, if you could play Pidgeot and you could also play Forest Sealstone, if you saw my Gengar deck list, bam, throw it over there. We definitely play both as well, just because it's a very consistent way to turbo through your deck. We play 2 copies of Binding Mochi. Again, this is a tool that we can search with Arven. This is one of my favorite techs in this deck because early on in the game, if you're able to establish Charizard board presence, you can take that measly 180. You can start doing 220 as soon as you evolve into a Charizard. And of course, if your opponent has taken more prize cards, you are able to deal even more damage. But really, really love the Binding Mochi Petron combo in this deck. I think it's super, super fun. A little bit underrated. Maybe not the most consistent thing in the world. You could definitely play a couple Nest Balls in this deck to be able to get to your Petrons quicker, but I haven't really found any problems. And to finish off the deck, we're playing 7 copies of Basic Fire Energy. I was running 6 till I was playtesting and running with one of my buddies, and he had prized a few of his Fire Energies, but after building up 2 Charizards and having them both be knocked out, he found that he had no energy left in his deck when he went to make his 3rd Charizard, so found a way to tuck in 1 more energy. Feels totally fine. I haven't really had any problems. I think more than 7 energy, you start to get pretty clunky in this deck, but in something like this, where you want to smack with your big boy, I think it's pretty important to be able to have access to the energy, but we do run a slim count because since Infernal Rain grabs energy straight from your deck, you don't particularly ever want to draw them. You want to be attaching with Charizard's ability. So, all that being said, this has been my Charizard Petron EX deck profile. I think it's really, really fun. Again, being able to build up a Charizard onto your bench and then use your Petron to switch it to the active, slap a Binding Mochi down. You're doing pretty big damage. So I've been having a lot of fun with this deck. I'm not the biggest Charizard fan in the world, but this deck functions pretty neat. It's a fun little strategy, and again, this deck build could be optimized a little bit. I think you could definitely shave down to 3 Charizards, which I might actually do so that I can run Charizard EX in a Gouging Fire deck. Keep an eye out for that deck profile soon. I am almost done. I don't know, man. Probably go up in the next day or so. I have a couple more decks that I want to profile, and I have a handful of decks that I want to finish building so that I can profile for you guys as well. In the meantime, if you've liked anything you saw here, drop a like on the video, drop a sub to the channel. We do Pokemon cards all the time. Sometimes it's deck profiles, sometimes it's big ol' openings. If you're still here from the Prismatic Evolution video, drop a sub, man. What are you doing? What are you doing? You obviously enjoy it. Whatever. Alright, it's enough of a plug. Until next time, I've been Santa, and you guys have been awesome. I will see you guys tomorrow for more Pokemon. Bye-bye.